Hello and welcome back to Americans Learn. My name is Kit, and today we have ourselves a outstanding video to get our learn on. It has to deal with the fall of Wake Island. Joining me is none other than my good colleague Daniel, as always. Glad to have you here, my friend. We are continuing on with this fantastic journey of covering the Pacific War. Again, all these videos have been done by kings and generals. So, as a favor for us, please support the original content creators. A lot of research, time, and effort has been put into making these videos. And again, we're watching the fall of Wake Island.
Sorry they didn't get reinforced, Kit.
At least we'll give them a hell of a fight.
Wake Island already seems to be the only place that has actually turned back an attack.
Yes, exactly. But don't worry. Marine Corps will keep on going at it. Trust, this isn't the first. This might be a setback, but see, Marines are never beaten in battle, Daniel. We just have another go at it, see? Okay. There you go. If we win, we win. If we die, they don't count.
Well, I hope the 15 people defending the island can hold it off.
I believe in them. And there you go. But without further ado, since I'm in charge of the ones and twos, let's pull this video up and get our learn on.
For the last 2 weeks, the war had raged on in the Pacific after the unexpected Japanese attack against British and American possessions in the east. The Japanese soldiers had already achieved victory after victory, pushing their enemy back on Malaya, Hong Kong, the Philippines, and the Pacific Islands. But this week would be one of Japan's finest hours in the course of the war, as they finally overcame their enemy in Hong Kong, launched their main offensive on the Philippines, and struck an incredible victory against the only place in the Pacific that had managed to thwart their expansionist aims so far. You know which battles are always entertaining, but...
And we will move forward from here. And there you go.
Back on December 11th, the task force of Admiral Kajioka had suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of the US Marines that defended Wake Island. Kajioka had underestimated Wake's defensive capabilities, and as a result, he was forced to limp back to base with 2 vessels lost and several damaged. But despite his complete failure, Kajioka wasn't relieved from his command. Instead, Admiral Inoue offered him more assistance for a second attack. Operations against Pearl Harbor, Guam, and the Gilbert Islands had concluded successfully in the first week, so their forces were now available for Kajioka to command. Inoue thus assigned him the 6th Cruiser Division of Admiral Goto for support, 2 destroyers from the Gilberts to replace those lost in the first attack, and 2 aircraft carriers, 2 cruisers, and 2 destroyers that were returning from Pearl Harbor to give valuable ground support with their aircraft. Now, Kajioka...
They need all this to take on a few Marines. That's how badass we are. There you go. You're welcome.
Had better odds to prove his worth in his second attempt to take Wake Island, departing Roy with his reinforced task force on December 21st. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, General MacArthur prepared his forces for the imminent main Japanese offensive. The most probable invasion site was in the Lingayen Gulf, where MacArthur had placed the North Luzon Force under the command of General Wainwright, and due to the recent Japanese landings in the north, he shortened its operational area south of San Fernando on the coast. Thus, Wainwright sent the 11th Division and the 26th Cavalry Regiment to defend the Gulf north of Damotis, and also sent a regiment of the 71st Division to San Fernando to stop the advance of the enemy coming from Vigan, while the rest of his forces stood on the route to Manila. On the other side, General Homer planned to land at the Lingayen Gulf with his well-trained 48th Division, then driving south between the Zambales Mountains along a valley that led directly to Manila. He also had prepared elements of the 16th Division, under the command of Lieutenant General Morioka Susumu, to land on Lamon Bay, planning to immediately advance upon landing towards Laguna de Bay. On December 17th, Morioka's forces departed Amami-Oshima, heading towards their destination.
It's so incredible to see the amount of detail being done by the Empire of Japan, the logistics to actually even take on the Philippines. And mind you, again, the Philippines, it just isn't one single landmass. It's a whole chain of islands ranging from different sizes. Like the logistics to even maintain an effective military campaign there. Of course, it needs, and this will be a bloody conflict that will impact millions of people. It's just incredible just seeing how this is being done. And of course, we're watching this being animated before us, but knowing that this was implemented in real life is shocking to me. I've never seen anything like it.
I mean, maybe if Japan had some experience dealing with moving ships around on a series of smaller sized islands, I don't know. Maybe they don't have any experience doing that.
Well, they I think they do, Dan. I think there's a lot of experience. Yes, just a little bit. I mean, this might come as a surprise to you, Daniel, but Japan, yes, there is a single landmass, but there's other surrounding islands.
What?
So they might be kind of sort of experts in that kind of thing. So there you go.
On the same day, Homma's first invasion force, consisting of the 9th Regiment, departed Keelung en route to the Lingayen Gulf. The following day, the 2nd Invasion Force embarked from the Penghu Islands, while the 3rd Invasion Force sailed from Tekau, heading to its objective. The 3 invasion forces would arrive together at the Lingayen Gulf on the night of December 21st, and thus Homma prepared to start his main offensive. Earlier that day, though, submarines from the Asiatic Fleet had discovered and engaged the Japanese convoys, only managing to destroy one of the troop transports. That same day, the Thais would sign with Japan a treaty of alliance, from which they received the northernmost Malay states that were lost in the previous century. They were also promised the Shan states in Burma, also lost to the British a century ago, so they would mainly support the Japanese in their offensives against these regions.
And this won't probably backfire. Nothing bad will happen. What is the worst that could happen?
No, what'll probably happen is that some Japanese officers like, yeah, but we'll go to war with them anyway.
And that whole French Indochina thing, I don't see that being a powder keg in the far future. I mean, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about anything. Everyone's overthinking everything.
At Hong Kong, General Sakai's men also managed to break through the Mount Nicholson defensive line, forcing the British to establish a last line of defense on Mount Cameron. And at Wake, the arrival of the carriers Soryu and Hiryu in the vicinity of the island meant that the defenders were going to be subjected to a heavy air bombardment.
Yeah, pause it real quick.
The attacks managed to destroy.
I just want to point out, I feel really bad for them because they went from, hey, reinforcements are coming, we're going to get protected, to, hey, the entire Japanese Navy is coming your way, and we're not going to be there for you. We're back in Pearl Harbor.
It's all right. Marines are never beaten in battle.
Destroy all the remaining Wildcats and also caused considerable damage to Peel Island. The following day, General Kawaguchi and 2 battalions of his detachment departed Miri en route to Kuching, where Colonel Lane was actually preparing to retreat southwest towards Dutch Borneo. To cover the convoys, the Japanese also bombarded the Singkawang airfield, forcing the Dutch to move their aircraft to Sumatra. Despite their efforts, though, Kawaguchi's convoy would be discovered by Dutch submarines, who then started to prey upon their victims.
Smart.
At the same time this was occurring, British and American military leaders, as well as President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill, met at Washington in the Arcadia Conference. The conference would last until January 14th, and it would have important effects, which we will discuss down the line. But the most important...
Again, Churchill's probably extremely happy now that the United States is involved in the conflict, because let's be very clear here, what's the precarious situation the Allies are all in. Look, America had the highest population count compared to its protectorate Canada at the time, then also and Australia as well. But America had a growing industry that was safe from harassment from bombers and All the stuff was in center mass or in other areas that was heavily protected. So the Allies had a secure location, the United States, in which it could produce an unlimited amount of tanks, machine guns, rifles, rockets, airplanes, ships, artillery, and so much more. So right now, everything might be seeing like a setback, but the day after Pearl Harbor, and we should have said this too when we covered the December 7th attack, there was the two reactions. Because I had this book called World War II Day by Day, and they cover it. And Churchill's response after December 7th is,
I
said,
never
good,
slept so well.
Good. We have won the war. We have won the war. And Hitler's response was he was happy. I mean, he saw the short-sightedness of it. Oh, their fleets are gone, but no one ever bothered to bring up. Hey, they got a lot of factories and machines, and he was like, we can't reach them.
Let America focus on the East. Also, for whatever reason, let's also declare war on them.
Yeah, which was again, I forget which book or series is covered in, but before the outbreak of the Second World War, the royal family and even Churchill, and even during the outbreak, went to visit America. But before the war even
had
started,
hot dogs.
Yeah. Oh, the infamous hot dog scene. Yes.
Yes.
With the royal family at the FDR estate. I actually been there. I was there at the Roosevelt estate in New York, not once but twice, and I really like it.
Nice.
It's a great spot to visit. But what was interesting is before the outbreak of the Second World War, I think some of Hitler's advisors even urged him, "Hey, you should go visit America." Like again. He dismissed us, but it's just like you want to it's just no one ever really took into account what we were capable of as a nation during that time frame. So there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Important one
Rant over.
would be the reaffirmation of the Europe First strategy already proposed in past conferences. This meant that the Allies would prioritize offensives in Europe, while in the Pacific they would adopt a defensive stance. But December 22nd would also see the start of Homma's main offensive, as his forces started to land in the Lingayen Gulf early in the morning. They disembarked largely unopposed at 3 positions, overrunning units of the 11th Division south of Agu. At the same time, Japanese forces at Vigan started their drive south, while the 9th Regiment at Bawang supported them with an attack to the north on San Fernando, and also advanced on Baguio to prevent a possible encirclement. Acting with haste, the Japanese would manage to reunite around San Fernando, leaving the regiment of the 71st in a difficult position and forcing them to retreat back to Baguio. Alarmed about the landings, MacArthur would have asked for reinforcements to contain the situation, but with the US more focused in Europe, his Filipino forces would have to suffice. Wainwright would thus order the 26th Cavalry Regiment to establish a defensive line at the town of Damotis, but they too would be hit hard by...
You know what I don't think I've ever heard in a sentence?
Mm-hmm.
Let's use the cavalry to set up defensive forces.
You got a problem against cavalry, Daniel? Huh?
I have a problem against them defending. Have you ever played Civilization? They get no defensive bonus.
Okay, look, listen. If the Death Korps Krieg can valiantly charge into machine
Those are
gun
bears. And by the way, that's not defensive forces. That's aggressive forces, which is what I would expect. I'm just making the point.
All right. But you know what? Give them hell, 26th Cavalry Regiment.
By Homma's forces, and ended up forced to retreat. Desperate, Wainwright then sent an M3 tank platoon to Rosario, which managed to advance up to Agu, but ended up destroyed under Japanese fire. By night, Homma had secured Rosario and the immediate area of the Lingayen Gulf, with only the battered 26th Cavalry still resisting to the south. Thus, MacArthur's planned active defense operations to stop the Japanese on the beaches had completely failed. The next day would see the continuation of the Japanese offensive, which managed to expel the retreating American defenders from Sison and Pozo Rubio. Later that day, the 26th Cavalry would be surrounded at Binalonan, but would successfully retreat after 4 hours of heavy fighting. Beaten, MacArthur now knew that his best chance was to establish a series of defensive lines, with the first one behind the Agno River, meant to delay the Japanese advance while his forces at Manila moved to Bataan to prepare for a contracted defense. This plan was WPO-3, which had been devised by the American High Command prior to the start of the war, and was considered to be too defeatist by MacArthur. He implemented WPO-3 far too late, and did not properly prepare for its implementation.
Don't worry, MacArthur. The Marine Corps will come and take back the Philippines for you. We got you. We got you, buddy. Don't worry. I'm not trying to be a jerk, especially to my fellow Army friends out there, but the Marine Corps got you back. It's okay. We'll do the heavy lifting.
The day already looked grim for the American defenders, but it was about to get even worse, as Kajioka's reinforced task force had finally arrived at Wake Island early in the morning. Under the cover of night, Kajioka planned to land his ground forces and SNLF Marines with naval and air support, hoping that the US Marines would not detect their approach, and staging a diversionary bombardment over Peel Island to distract them. Around 0300, the Japanese started to land at Wake Island, with some 580 Marines landing at 4 different locations, and a further 100 Marines landing on the southern shore of Wilkes Island. Heavy fighting ensued, especially around a 3-inch gun manned by Lieutenant Robert Hanna, which started to fire on the patrol boats used to transport the Japanese Marines. Hanna's gun was defended by Major Putnam and the crew of the VMF 211 Squadron, which successfully held the perimeter against the Japanese attacks. Although Hanna would manage to explode both of the Japanese patrol boats, the Japanese still landed all their forces and got to cut American communications. This left Major Devereaux and Commander Cunningham in the dark, so Devereaux would order forces from Peel to mount a last line of defense in front of his command post. A small force of SNLF Marines, the Keshitai, had actually infiltrated undetected on the eastern end of the airfield, advancing up to this last line of defense. And at Wilkes, Captain Platt and his forces had surrounded the 100 SNLF Marines, then executing a surprise attack that inflicted heavy casualties and left the Japanese completely weakened. But despite the Marines' best efforts, Cunningham would decide to surrender at 0700, trying to save as many lives as possible.
We're never being in bad. We're just gonna have another go at it. You see?
I feel like because the problem is he doesn't know what's happening, so he has communications have been cut. But I can imagine if it hadn't been cut, he would have realized, hey, the guys at the end of the island basically have them taken out. They just have to move to help the next group. They take them out, then they help the next group, and then he just has to hold on.
Yeah. Well, see, there's a problem with okay. Again, holding on, absolutely correct. You got to hold on. You got to hold the line. But there is a few factors to weigh in. One, the relief force is not there. 2, ammunition and supplies. How long can you last? And even if there is enough to do another pushback against an assault, can you survive another one? Because something tells me that, again, knowing that we've seen, Japan would have kept on coming again and again to where everyone, and again, we all know what kind of happens here at Wake Island, and it's unfortunate, but let's go ahead and continue.
The American defenders would actually manage to hold most of their positions on Wake for 12 hours in total before the news of the surrender reached them. But at that point, Devereaux and Cunningham believed most of these positions lost and could not check on them because they had lost communications at the start of the assault. The fall of Wake would nonetheless drop morale for the Allied defenders, but their sacrifice would not be forgotten. December.
Okay, so I just want to read this. The Japanese Marines would then round up the survivors in preparation for their execution, leaving them stripped, bound, kneeling, and facing machine guns. But the timely appearance of Admiral Kojikawa would save their lives, as he wanted them as prisoners of war and not as martyrs. So they're okay. So here's the situation. All right, and I'm not going to defend the actions of the military higher ups of the Empire of Japan, but not all of them were on board with this crazy militaristic doctrination of destroy everything, conquer, and everything else. Because some of them saw the bigger picture. Never forget, Admiral Yamamoto was the one who was kind of advising, like, hey, we shouldn't go to war with America just yet. And he built himself a lot of enemies in the military command. And there were other lower tier officers who realized, like, look, we just can't do this. And obviously being a prisoner of war was just as bad. If you ever want to see a film about how some of these U.S. prisoners of war were treated by the Empire of Japan, I think there's a film called Unbroken, which again is a former Olympian was specifically targeted by this cruel colonel in the Japanese military, and he, it was really there's a honk in the background. There was it was torturous. It was brutal. But you had all these forces going to get slaughtered, and I think many of these colonels realized, like, or admirals too, realized, like, look, you just can't do this. It's going to make these other people angry when they come back at us. They're going to be viewed as martyrs. You don't want that. I don't know, Daniel, your thoughts?
I don't have anything to add. I thought that was really well said.
Yeah. If folks, hold on, wait, let's open the floor up to our audience. If there's anything additional that I've left out or some other things that you want to add into the conversation, please type it in the comment section below. We want to hear from you and your feedback. So let us know. This is a Call Americans Learn. So let's get our learn on. Let's have polite discourse though. Okay. Come on. We're all friends here. Gosh darn it.
That's right.
23rd. Would also
but again, just a final note. Marines are never beaten in battle. We just have another go.
See the fall of the Mount Cameron line in Hong Kong, leaving Victoria City to the mercy of the Japanese, as well as a Dutch attack by 2 submarines, the K-14 and K-16, over the Japanese convoys en route to Kuching, which managed to sink 2 troop transports and 1 destroyer. On Christmas Eve, Kawaguchi's attack on Kuching began early in the morning, landing at the mouth of the Santubong River. The British defenders offered fierce resistance, but in the end, Colonel Lane decided the following day to retreat through the jungles towards Dutch West Borneo. Also at Hong Kong, Canadians stand at the Stanley Peninsula, where the Japanese were rapidly encroaching on them. And at Changsha, the Japanese decided to start a new operation in China, which we will cover next week. The early hours of December 24th would also see the 16th Division landing at Lamon Bay to the surprise of the Philippine defenders. Morioka's forces disembarked at 3 different locations, quickly engaging the defenders of the South Luzon Force. General Parker had placed the 1st and 51st Divisions there, but defenses were highly disorganized, as the 51st was moving to Legazpi to counter the previous invasion. To add to the confusion, MacArthur had placed Parker under the command of the Bataan defenses, then assigning the South Luzon Force to Brigadier General Albert Jones. Jones immediately planned to delay a possible Japanese advance through the mountains to Manila, while at the same time fighting an aggressive withdrawal into Bataan.
Keep pause it right there.
Go ahead.
I want to point out that I really like is that, I mean, we kind of see the difference between like the American and British defensive. The American ones so far are always, okay, let's make multiple lines of defense, get ready to, move back as we need. Whereas the British are like, oh no, this area isn't good. Let's go somewhere else.
I think terrain and the military commanders have to be taken into account because, again, no one was really prepared for the absolute onslaught of the Japanese military machine. The Empire of Japan was dead set of having seasoned veterans, and momentum and surprise is on their side, plus technology too. And so I think like each scenario is different. So I mean, it's I really can't add. Never mind. Disregard what I was saying. I was saying some words.
I was more meaning it as like to me it's speaking more to their doctrine styles than anything else. Because you're right. It's like none of them expected this to happen in the way it did. It's about how fast do you respond to it, and it just seems like with the American defenses, they're all about let's make a layered defense. Let's have a place that we prepare in advance to back up into. And it just seems like with a lot of the Commonwealth powers. It was, oh no, we lost this area, let's move to the next one, without having that sort of, we should probably set up the next retreat point. At least I didn't see them show it. Maybe I missed it. Maybe they didn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems like that is a advantage to the American defensive doctrine.
Agreed.
Brioca was facing fierce resistance by the dug-in Filipino forces, but in the end, the Japanese still managed to push back the defenders. Forces coming from Legazpi also met at Sianin after moving through the Bicol Peninsula, while the main units of the 16th Division pressed west towards Mount Banahao and south towards Tayabas Bay, with the objective of taking control of the route to Manila. Homma planned for them to then advance across the Tayabas Mountains to Cavite, from where they would capture Manila. For the Japanese, the Philippine capital was now within their grasp. Acting according to WPO-3, MacArthur ordered Jones to efficiently coordinate with Wainwright for their retreat to Bataan, because if one of them retreated too fast, then the other would be trapped and annihilated. Thus, Jones established his main defensive line on the town of Los Baños, with the 51st Division hastily retreating south of Banahao under heavy Japanese pressure, and the 1st Division retreating north of the mountains with little opposition. At this point, Wainwright had also started to withdraw to his second line, ranging from the Zambales Mountains to the town of San Jose. On Christmas Day, the end came for the British defenders at Hong Kong, as General Maltby and the Hong Kong authorities finally decided to surrender. On Stanley, the Canadians resisted fiercely, and even managed to briefly break through.
Wow.
But when news of the surrender reached them, they did so as well. December 25th would also see the invasion of Jolo in the Sulu Islands, with General Sakaguchi departing Davao back on December 23rd. Upon arriving to his destination, one of his battalions landed at Jolo and captured the city and the airfield, facing slight resistance from the local inhabitants. Now, Sakaguchi had his main base ready to conduct operations against Dutch Borneo. Meanwhile, on December 26th, MacArthur declared Manila an open city, knowing that its defense would probably cause the destruction of all his forces. Yet the city would nonetheless be subjected to Japanese bombardments that caused a fair amount of damage. At this point, Homma's forces had already broken through the towns of Carman and Tayug, but they failed to rout the fleeing American defenders. By December 27th, the Japanese had gotten to the towns of San Manuel and San Quintin, while Wainwright had successfully reached his second line of defense. This is where we leave you for now, but next week we'll cover the continuation of the Japanese advance down the Malay Peninsula and of the American retreat into Bataan. Once again, thanks to...
So, folks, there's a lot to unpack here with that. Number one, obviously, again, the momentum of the Japanese war machine is overwhelming the Allied powers. But during this time frame, well, we have to look back as well. It might seem the end. We have to look at what's happening in the United States as well. There is a massive recruitment that's happening in the country. There's not only just recruited, everyone's being drafted in. It was in the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, eventually Army Air Force, all of that. And that is coming into fruition. There's also a massive call for armaments and production. So while 1941 is looking like a horrible year, we have to remember there's 42, 43, and of course the great pushback of what the Allied powers, specifically thanks to America, which it's an industry, especially in the South Pacific theater, what we'll do. So, I mean, it might seem disheartening that the Empire of Japan is winning. We'll be back.
Yeah, I feel like the one thing to kind of build off what you're saying is like Japan's doing very well. Remember, they don't have a lot of troops relatively to what they would have liked because so many of them are bogged down in China, which we're also helping supply for kind of keeping them in that situation anyway. So it's just a big thing to remember is that currently what is Japan actually facing? They're facing understrength, under-equipped, under-trained garrisons with commanders who aren't really ready or familiar with the terrain. Like I remember with the British when they were talking about how many like they just didn't speak the same language and they had really no systems to deal with that efficiently. Everyone's being attacked from positions that are only to some degree defended, most degrees not really. They're also very surprised at where everything's happening, everything's landing. The leadership seems to be, generally speaking, lacking because they're prioritizing so much on Europe, and that's where I'm sure all their best commanders are. They're not guarding some, the British generals, the best ones aren't, guarding some island that's well defended in Indonesia. They're in England, trying to not lose England. And so effectively, my point is that just watching this and realizing that Japan's doing really well, but they're not really fighting a really well-organized defensive army that's well-equipped, which is what America is generally known for. Anyway, I was actually just listening to a thing yesterday about later when America, like right around just after Battle of the Bulge kind of timeline, where like there was this German commander was like complaining because he's like, they won't ever attack us unless they already have artillery support and air support. We can't fight that. Why don't they just attack us with what they have? And it's like, well, sort of explains itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas here, I'm sure that they have like, hey, here's the World War I surplus. Hey, we got some Stuart tanks, some light World War I ish era vehicles, and it doesn't seem like they have a lot to throw at them anyway. And to your point, all that's getting built right now.
Improved versions of it.
Everything. Yeah. So they're about to get hit by. Remember, they were talking like way before that. Like the ships that were commissioned for the most part during the war didn't get built till after the war. Most of the stuff that got built during the war was that stuff that FDR set up in that jobs program like years ago.
Yep.
So those are coming online now. They're modern in their design. They're going to be adapted as they're getting built, because that's one thing I always hear all the time about the American doctrine from listening to listening to people that fight the U.S. talk about what it's. And it's like we're super adaptable in what we do. And I love someone said that America, like the British were known for this, the Canadians were known for that. America was always known for attacking you in the place that you least expected with strength, which is very much what the Japanese are doing right now. But the point is that the Japanese are really fighting one of the most under-equipped, like everything's been stripped. So sure, to your point, yeah, they can take all this right now. But can you hold that when any amount of firepower comes back and you don't have the oil to defend?
Yeah. Again, folks, only the beginning. We have a whole treasure trove of videos to continue to watch. So please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that ring bell notification. That way you're made aware when we upload new content onto our YouTube channel, Americans Learn. So please be sure to double check that you're always subscribed, and keep a clear eye open when we upload new content, but also please support the original content creators. Shout out to my friend Daniel. Shout out to Kings and Generals. Shout out to all of you lovely people. My name's Kit. I'm out of here. Take care. And remember, keep on getting your learn on.